Welcome back. We're going to go under the financial microscope. Janine Fletcher Taylor is the manager of the JBDC's Marketing Services Unit, and she now joins us to say why Jamaican consumers will buy Jamaican goods every time if their expectations are met at the right price. Good morning, Janine. Welcome.
Good morning, Dr. Sutherland. Good morning, all.
Morning, Janine. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Okay. Glad to know that.
So first, Janine, tell us the JBDC's Marketing Services Unit. What services do you provide and to whom?
Well, we are primarily targeting micro, small, and medium enterprises, and as part of JBDC's entire business development suite of services, the marketing arm focuses on building capacity in marketing strategies and providing marketing access to the various channels that we have in-house. We have retail stores, we have online stores, and we also partner with a number of external partners that provide third-party market access. So our primary goal is to ensure that we move the client from a prototype into market readiness, then into market access, with a view that once the products get the right exposure, then the economic forces will generate other market players and other buyers and invariably export. So that is the mechanism by which we support.
Okay. Now, Econ 101 tells us that if you want the consumer to buy your goods and services based on his or her indifference curve, it means that the quality and the pricing must be right. People do not just buy goods and services because of patriotism and because they come from Jamaica. They want to maximize their income. And you say that once the Jamaican product meets the standard, then the people will buy them. Talk to us about that.
Well, one of the things I would want to add to price is the notion of value.
Yeah, man.
Because one of the things is that when we assign just price, then it still gives us the room to add value to our product. And I think that is where Jamaica stands to be able to be competitive, because when you look at some of the trends in the marketplace, especially when you look at the health trends, we have the consumer now looking at ingredients. We have them looking at manufacturing processes. How much of it is artificial ingredients and artificial processing? So because of the access to information, one of the things we would need to do is to demonstrate value, whether it is through the marketing strategies, through the packaging and promotion of the product. And so if what we are saying is that the consumer is going to be making a choice between one product or the other, and they must be able to ascribe some value that makes that decision. In fact, we may think that, okay, when the consumer goes to the shelf, the first thing they're searching for is the product made in Jamaica.
No, they're not doing that. No. They're looking for utility, yes.
The first thing they're looking for is this value for my money.
Precisely, yes.
And then perhaps when they have done that investigation, they will say, okay, where is it made?
Yep.
And it's essentially what we're saying is that if you connect those two things, it's a given. They will make the purchasing decision. But to just build on this notion that because it is Jamaican,
not gonna happen.
And the average Jamaican does understand that for every purchase they make, they are contributing to the economy.
Right.
But they have $1,000 to spend.
They want maximum value for that $1,000.
Max out that value, right? And our observation is that when you look at the way we are still traditional in our manufacturing, simply because of the affordability of technology, the type of logistics, the kind of sophistication that our counterparts globally are engaging with.
Interest rates are too high, energy costs too high. Yep.
A whole slew of things, right?
Limited R&D, yep.
Right. So, that's the reality. But there is a segment of the market that is willing to listen to what we have to say. But when we think about one of the primary aspects of the manufacturing value chain, which is packaging, just packaging.
Right.
Majority of our manufacturers import their packaging solution. So what is going to happen if there's a breakdown in the supply chain? They're not going to meet buyer expectations. They're going to have challenges, right? So when we look at our past infrastructure, we had quite a number of
Packaging companies.
Yes.
packaging companies,
Mhm.
correct? And so, as part of the economic model, when we want to tackle this goal of export, we must be looking at where the gaps fall in the value chain. There is packaging. There is not and a certain amount of strategic agriculturing processing where we're saying, okay, let's focus on these crops and try to ensure that we are scaling.
Yeah, man.
So,
Adding value.
yes, so once the consumer is there already, but imagine that you are no longer there's access. Even Amazon is delivering at your doorstep.
Yes.
So when we even think about accessibility, we still have issues locally with distribution, getting products across the island, getting products into our region, getting products that have peculiar nuances like refrigerated products and certain types of products. So we're still primarily doing well in the packaging, agro-processing, health, skin care, hair care. Those are making leaps and bounds. We have a lot of diversity taking place in our agro-processing now, and more attention to things like just the simplicity of, say, packaging our seasonings, because we have a gastronomical brand out there that has recognition as to how Jamaicans cook. Now, when we look at the landscape of imports now that consumers are buying goods and services, what are they buying? You know, it's seasonings and sauces, yes, but it's also meat. So when we talk about poultry and meat, that's a huge potential, but the nuances of the logistics behind that, shipping, exporting refrigerated goods is a massive undertaking. Do we have enough land and grazing for cows and small ruminants and stuff like that? So I find that when we talk about the consumer, I'm going to be very keen on pointing out that consumers are not just buying these small pockets of products, because those products are already doing well. They are doing well locally and they're doing well internationally. What we need to look at are the various strategic opportunities that we can harness, and then we can then look at what are some of the technological advances within. We are still not there with solar energy, but that's some huge opportunity. Do we have the service providers, the persons who would monitor and sort of maintain a solar factory, for example? When we talk about economics of it, the value chain has so many nodules that needs to be considered. I find that we still are working in a sort of dispersed manner.
Silos,
and yes, very siloed, very emotional, very passionate. But we need to get down to the brass tacks, the grassroots of business development. Yes, and then I have not, for example, I would love for us to really earmark crops that we are dedicating to focus on. Such one is, we have seen, we know JBDC has always been trying to push where some of these business opportunities lie. We speak about the essential oils, we speak about the Scotch bonnet crops and the diversity of that crop in many of our hardcore products. The pimento, which takes a very long time for the tree to mature. So we have to be looking at 5 to 10 years
long term.
Yes.
Yes. That is the only way we are going to beat the challenges of the real world. And I think although we have so many disruptions in our global system, that it still provides us with a huge opportunity now for us to look at the Caribbean as that value chain, look at the Caribbean as a sort of collective.
Yeah, man, that was the original intention.
Right, so for me, that's what the consumer is the least of your concern. All you need to do is make sure that you know what they want to buy.
Precisely.
And then create a solution that is quite responsive to their needs.
That's correct.
Right. So Janine, how difficult is it to find markets? Because again, because of our size, we are mostly niche players. How challenging is it to find markets for some of these things that you're speaking about?
I have not seen any challenge in finding potential markets. What
Challenge
I
is that we
see,
do not have the supply.
right, and not only that, the sophistication of
Right.
negotiation.
Yeah.
So our legal framework,
Okay.
how sophisticated are our MSMEs and even large companies
Mm-hmm.
in negotiating legal contracts for supply, our intellectual property, our consistent supply chain, our logistics, navigating the different corners of the world require different sorts of regulatory requirements. So it means diversifying your own product across requirements from different areas. So perhaps zoning in on one specific market and building the capacity, because the exporting process is a very complex one. It sounds simple, but it's very complex. So if a company does not have a legal officer, a engineer, a supply chain manager, a import officer, how many companies have this sort of human
Right.
resource structure?
Which brings
You
us
know?
to a question. Do you believe that the whole thing about exporting is a detective story? It is too complicated and it's easier to import. Don't you believe we should be taking steps to reduce the detective story involved in exporting?
Yes, it is. It is definitely something that, and there's so much support there. But again, there isn't a strategic approach so that you can concentrate your efforts into learning how to navigate. So if we say Canada, if we say the Scandinavian countries, each of these
Different regulations.
right. So we have to know, and the learning. So we have a few companies, maybe 10%, that have been out there doing it, but then they had to learn through some heavy mistakes. Some of them potentially closing down a business.
Okay.
One bad shipment. So for some reason, these dynamics are also forever changing. So, every day there's a new trade agreement, there's some nuances within the market space. Something happens to a consumer, it changes the regulatory requirements, So the responsiveness, access to information, I do believe that the Trade Board has made significant strides in providing a platform for that there is at least a research portal now. But then our MSMEs now, our private sector, would now need to invest in the learning. They have to invest in the human capacity building. Perhaps
That's
look
what the
at,
World Bank is saying.
yes, looking at mentorship and looking at how willing we are to share trade secrets, to share trade information. How willing are we to consolidate shipments and work together? So I believe it is complex by the very nature of what it is, but it's not impossible, and it does require a certain level of stakeholder engagement around coalescing around one common vision. I do believe too that we have diversified significantly in the manufacturing sector, but still we have not tackled certain gaps that are wide open spaces, and if perhaps we can understand those opportunities, those trade opportunities a little better. As I said earlier, for example, what it would take to export meat, that's something that perhaps we could look at, as a competitive advantage, since our counterparts are using so many artificial, products that we can somehow carve out a sort of niche offering. But again, we lack some of the savvy and common understanding around what it takes. What does the first world country do to get their products here? And we don't have 3/4 of the trade barriers that they have. So it is much easier to import than it is to export.
That's the problem, and that's what we're saying. We need to cut that detective story.
Make it easier for our people to export.
Yes.
Right.
Demystify it,
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Comprehensive
Janine.
presentation.
You're most welcome.
Okay. That was Janine Fletcher Taylor, manager of the JBDC's Marketing Services Unit, telling us why Jamaican consumers will buy Jamaican goods every time if their expectations are met at the right price.